Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. It's an exciting one. No Man's Sky has got another major update. It's the 13th one to the game, it's called Origins, and it's the latest in a pretty busy year for Hello Games. It's one that's also seeing them, of course, publish The Last Campfire and tease their next game. One that basically seems to be dreaming big in a similar way to how No Man's Sky did. So, with today's question, we want to basically ask and find out how their redemption arc is going and what's actually happened since the engoodening of No Man's Sky, the state of the game, how it's doing, and what is up. Well, today you're going to find out, and also, No Man's Sky's design language is quite gorgeous, and you can actually learn a lot of how to think like that with Skillshare, today's sponsor, where, for a limited time, you'll get a free trial, and it's just $10 a month after that. Now look, we've talked about productivity things a lot, so instead today, let's talk about something that you can go and make with all those new productivity skills, and I've got the perfect one for you. It is logo design with Aaron Draplin. I mean, look at this screen. Look at those reviews. They're damn high. 85,000 students. That's a lot of students. So you know this is a good one. And look, being able to make a logo, that is an incredible design test. It shows that you're looking for the right things. It's a wonderful skill to have. I mean, certainly if you're applying to a firm like ours, yeah, it's skills like that that are the things that we look for. I mean, hell, how many professional video editors started off with Skillshare? The answer actually is many. You can learn all those new skills just like that. You don't need to go to uni for them. Aaron is a great host. I love how he breaks it all down real simple. And if you look at the class project section, you can pretty clearly see that people are having success with it as well, which really counts. So I'd say you should give this one a shot. I mean, even just for a bit of fun, you'll pick up something new, and you can do that for free if you click my link down below, and it's just $10 a month after that. So, a big thanks to Skillshare for supporting us, and with that said, let's get into the video. Origins is an interesting update in that it's less about adding a whole raft of new game systems, and it's more about the fundamentals of No Man's Sky. That's something I think is rather fitting for what is being billed as a version 3.0 update, where basically the situation is, right, the game has actually changed a fair bit since launch, new systems and things like that, but the universe itself has stayed largely similar. Hello Games are therefore saying that this is called Origins because it's a bit of a fresh start. It's just a lot more to the fundamentals of the universe, and that's really what they've done. So the technical groundwork for this has been 18 months in the making, and the team have mathematically doubled the variety and diversity of like the planet generation in the universe. And hey, they've even added sandworms. Yeah, for the first time since that reveal trailer, so they kind of should have been there at launch. Now, if you've played the game, then I think you will almost instantly see how much better the terrain generation is, especially since launch, and especially when you compare the new Origins planets to the older generated ones. And when you scroll down the update page, it's quite the experience. So, millions of new planets using their new procedural generation tech. That includes new colors, dramatic landscapes is another thing where basically that's a lot of tweaking the terrain generation algorithm. Stuff that I find pretty interesting because terrain generation was actually what I did for my final project in university. Also, volcanoes, firestorms, tornadoes, lightning, meteors, gravitational anomalies, and more. There's also richer diversity of life on every planet with new alien fauna, there's bugs, dangerous infestations as well, which have got gameplay associated with them. Also, the clouds look significantly better. I mean, it's a night and day difference. There's also other things, like there's archive buildings to explore, there's new biomes like marshes, there's anomalous buildings. So basically, right, it's more missions, more stuff, more exploration on the actual planets themselves. And the core here, right, is they've made a massive amount of changes, and the current players of No Man's Sky, and if you're interested into how many people that actually is, we'll get to that pretty soon in this video, but those current players seem to be over the moon. Now, there have been other things as well, and there's a bit of a UI refresh, though, to be honest with you, the UI still does feel a bit like it was designed by aliens in my experience when I hopped onto it last night. Basically, the point here is there's been so much change to the core of the universe that, yeah, even the experienced players do seem to be fairly interested invested in this. Now, what I think matters a lot more, though, is that this has a massive multiplier effect when put in combination with past updates. So the universe is not reset or anything like that. This clicks into people's existing progression, and that's progression that I think has been a lot more rewarding as of late. So, past updates, let's rocket through them. You've got Desolation, that had horror-like Derelict freighters to explore, plus a deepening of the freighter system. The crossplay patch gave crossplay. The Exomech one gave people another type of progression for their, on-planet utility, plus other tweaks. The Living Ship update, well, that gave people a new type of organic starship that they could basically develop, so that's another path of progression for people. Then there was the Synthesis update that deepened the starship progression. It added in the salvaging of ships, updated terrain editing, it revamped the space map, and basically it did a whole bunch of UI and quality of life work. As an example, the Personal Refiner is a pretty good example of that. A lot better for quality of life. And then, of course, before that, you've got No Man's Sky Beyond last year, and that was the last time that we actually covered this game on this channel. But the point here, right, is that they've actually worked quite solidly on the fundamentals of the game with the likes of Foundations and Next. And then they added in more systems like the exosuit or the exos, the living ships and all of that jazz, and a little bit more like the deeper base building. For me, like if you could get like a little bit of Satisfactory in there, I'd really be down for it. But basically, they've done all of that. And now, upon that building block of the game's systems, reward loops, etc. being in a better place, they've now worked in the universe. And I can say that, like, my initial new player experience, it is vastly better than what it was the last time that I hopped back into the game. And that certainly is a good thing. So with that said, let's talk about the direction of No Man's Sky and basically what's going to be happening with this game and how Hello Games are actually developing it. So, the goal with Origins, of course, is to alter the core of the game, the universe, but without disrupting the overall feel of the game as has been established by the past raft of updates. Now, the original patch plan for this game was actually to have lots of smaller updates, but that's something that basically wouldn't have worked because, well, the game was banjaxed at launch, right? That's why they had to focus on larger tentpole releases like Next and Foundations. And then after that, they've only been recently able to focus on like the more compartmentalized updates like the ones that we covered earlier. Now, an interesting tidbit here that we found is that some of this is actually rooted in Sean Murray's distaste of sequels. Now, the story there is he worked at Criterion, and he basically said that working on Burnout sequels was just never as fun as working on the first one. So, with No Man's Sky, they just want to keep on making it, right? They can focus on making new stuff instead of, revisiting the whole game, but slightly differently for a sequel. And I think that is something that a lot of gamers actually want, and I think the prime example of that is a very different game. Destiny. Destiny 1 was a big old mess, and then it became really quite good. Then Destiny 2 just sort of did away with much of the progress that Destiny 1 made during its life. That was obviously bad, and that's obviously a prime example of where a sequel does not make that much sense. And I think it's good that No Man's Sky is basically going to be evolving in this way, and I do have to wonder, it seems like the Origins update involved a lot of engineering, a lot of new code, and I do then have to wonder if that is setting the stage for, well, more deep exploration and universe stuff as we go into these future updates that I'm sure will follow from this, because this is V3, and I'm actually now pretty excited to see what V3.1 is going to be. Let's talk about the state of No Man's Sky, one of the, I guess, few free live services. I mean, short of pumping money into their, merch store, there's not much of a way to actually give Hello Games more money for the content that they make, which probably means that it's one of the best live service games that's going on right now, right? I mean, it's free and it's developed with its audience, with its audience's needs in mind. I mean, the recent updates have been strong and they have actually shown a pretty solid feedback loop with the audience. In many ways, this to me feels like, the opposite of, say, the Avengers live service, just money wheel that has been developed there. Now, of course, we should be realistic here. No Man's Sky has always been a commercial success. Even with the refunds, they made a massive amount of money from that game. And, of course, they did lose a lot of people, but they got a lot of mindshare. And that means they're in the stage where updating the game does make them revenue, as it will drum up interest and drive more sales. Now, I'd say overall, the prevailing opinion from all of this is that the game has actually redeemed itself. I think Internet Historian is in large part responsible for disseminating that vibe past the core audience of this game. I mean, it's funny, like, the sandworms in this latest update, they're less than subtle, right? Because they were in the first trailer, but obviously not in the game. And I think that's the perfect segue into actually talking about how many people are actually playing this game. Hello Games actually say that it's more popular in 2020 than ever because of the updates and things like Xbox Game Pass. So, thinking about this, I decided to take a look at the PC market and try to work things out. Console numbers are hard, but we do at least know there was 1 million people via Game Pass. Now, Steam actually bumped up to 35k peak players with this update, which really isn't massively impressive, and it's not as high as previous updates. Over time, actually, the peaks that have came from these updates have decreased, even for the more major updates. So you would then think the game's actually becoming less relevant. Well, I would say in terms of the actual health of the game, when you start to look at the monthly averages and medians, it's a lot more interesting. So, this is me doing the average of the monthly averages. In 2018, that average of averages was 5,403 players. 2019, 5,109. And the 2020 average is 7,356. That's quite a bit higher. But what's more interesting is the median. You see, using a median, it does somewhat help you remove the impact of peaks. And I think that's something that is pretty useful for actually getting a gauge of the general long-term players of this game. So, in 2018, that median was 2,057. In 2019, it was 3,144. And in 2020, it's 6,627. So you can see that the median of the average monthly players for the year has really been going up. Now, remember, these are numbers, right? Those ones that I just quoted, those do not include the Origins patch launch, so 2020 is probably doing slightly better than those numbers would suggest. Now, of course, those might look quite small to you. Obviously, the peak numbers are a fair bit larger, but I just felt that the average is probably the one that's just the most sensible for, like, the long-term health of the game. And I think what this all overall tells us is that the very diligent and increasingly frequent updates have been working for No Man's Sky and Hello Games. And I think you then combine that with Xbox Game Pass, and I think it is safe to say that No Man's Sky is basically at the top of its game and is extremely successful. We've talked about the game No Man's Sky, but what about Hello Games, right? Well, they actually say they're very happy with how it's going, which is obviously not surprising given all we've said in this video. Now, they're also working on their next project, but they have learned their lessons, and they have said they won't be talking much because it's pretty early. Now, they did, of course, have the last Campfire. That was a smaller launch, very different type of game. They did feel the need to make it clear, though, that their next game is, as they put it, quote, another huge, ambitious game like No Man's Sky. Now, we may not get to hear for a while, given the ambition that seems to be here, but I do imagine it'll do better when it comes to its launch day. I think they've learned a lot, and I think I'm pretty sure we actually do know they're a significantly larger team than they were when they were actually shipping No Man's Sky. Now, as we move this out to the sort of industry and audience side of things, I think that's where it gets interesting, because those who know about No Man's Sky in passing are often very hostile towards it still, based on the launch situation. Perhaps if they've not seen the Engoodening of No Man's Sky video by Internet Historian. So the people who just know of it just because of the big disaster that it was, I think there's still a lot of negativity coming from them, and that is understandable because it is predicated off the entire shit show that was the launch of that game. Now, that said, those who actually have kept up to date with that game do generally seem to be, I would say, over the moon with No Man's Sky. I actually would say that there's probably no amount of money that could lead to marketing that is or would be as effective as Internet Historian's, I'd say, fairly realistic and just video that did a hell of a lot of work for this game, suffice to say. Overall, though, I would say that I think the industry has forgiven them. I would say that anybody who could be a potential audience member of Hello Games, for the most part, will have forgiven them, at least as it would come down to, the statistics. And I think when you actually compare them to other groups, I think it's safe to say that they've done more to earn people's trust back than almost all AAAs. right? I think that's something you can almost say for sure. They could have taken the money and they could have ran away, but they didn't. So with their team being larger now, I would imagine that No Man's Sky will actually just go from strength to strength based off whatever tech they've made as a part of the V3 Origins update, and that their next game will have a significantly more reasonable launch. I think they know they have however many millions and can just afford to take their time and really do something that will blow people's minds in a way that's not predicated on a bit of a false hype cycle, which absolutely was what No Man's Sky was upon its launch. So yeah, to close this one off, I mean, it's an interesting situation, isn't it? This game has came such a long way from its launch. Its launch was an absolute shit show. I was so... very just like, I love terrain generation, but man, this is not a good game. That was my experience at launch. The Origins update, though, is, I mean, I've been going around planets. I think it's pretty damn cool. Some of them are a lot better looking. You get some of those crazy situations that they're teasing, like the lightning. I haven't met all of those yet, but just knowing that they're out there, yeah, it does actually make it a more interesting universe to explore, and certainly that was a big problem. The entire universe was just different brands of the same sort of hipster indie album cover. I say that, by the way, absolutely loving the soundtrack of that game, but you know what I mean, right? They were all very, very samey, but now I do feel like they're getting to a far better place with their universe. Overall, the cautionary tale of No Man's Sky still does exist, and they still have paid a price for that, but personally, I will say that I do think Hello Games should be commended for their efforts in actually trying to right those wrongs. When a wrong has happened, or incurred, you can't really go back in time and change it. The only thing you can do is just get to the grindstone and try to work as hard as you can to fix the problem you've made. And I do think that more than any other studio I've really heard of that recently, I think they've been doing that, so fair play to them. I actually do think they deserve the success that they're currently experiencing. So, there you go, that's that situation. Now, if you would like to learn some fun design skills via Aaron Draplin, then hey, hit up Skillshare in that link down below. 2 free months of premium. It's a pretty damn sweet deal. It's a really great price after that as well. And yeah, they do help out both of our channels. They've been a very long time supporter of us. We thank them for that. I thank you for watching this video. And with that said, I will see you next time.